All right, you guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. This is called the Trauma Sensitivity and Yoga Training. My name is Johnny Goodmanson. For those of you who are not familiar with me, we're going to do a little intros section. But my camera is a little higher than the faces I can see, and I love to look at the faces. So I'm going to do the best I can to remember to look at you in the camera, but I also want to look at the beautiful faces in front of me. So I'm going to be kind of moving back and forth, and you'll see my eyes move back and forth just a little bit. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Johnny. I've been teaching yoga since about 2008. And since then, I have just used a lot of my own personal history and my massage therapy, anatomy, and physiology instructing history, just to teach a lot about trauma, because I was heavily traumatized as a kid. And now I am to a point where I can actually not necessarily say I'm really grateful it happened, but I can look back in gratitude to some of the experiences that I have because of how it's been used to participate in my own healing and in the healing of others. So you'll want to grab your manual. You guys have, at first, it's going to be given to you in chunks because if I'm honest, it's not complete. I keep wanting to add to it. And then I'm like, oh, I heard this really good thing and I want to add it to it, so it's coming in its fullness when you get to the end. So I ask for forgiveness in advance. it'll be coming. But what we'll do is we'll add each session to the previous session so that by the end you have one complete manual. So you will have an electronic this go round. And then you guys know how it is, especially if you've attended trainings with me, it's kind of a work in progress. And so it's just kind of an ongoing thing. But you'll want to grab that. We're going to start with introductions first. So many of you do know me. So I'm just going to just give a brief introduction of my history. And then I'm just going to have you guys do two things. So write this down, grab a pen if you have a pen handy. Grab a pen. I'm going to have you say your name and what you envisioned when you registered for this. Okay, so spoiler alert, we're probably all here because we think we've got some trauma, right? Like nobody's shocked there, right? Or we want to walk other people through their experience of healing from trauma, right? One or the other. That's what we're here for, right? So I'm not looking when I ask you that, like, what did you envision when you registered? You don't have to give me your trauma and history of abuse, right? If that was your experience. But when you decided to register or this piqued your interest, why? What were your kind of thought processes there? This is all another way to say, what are your expectations? Let's talk about those as we kind of get into this. So I've introduced myself. I'm here because this is a training I would have wanted to have taken. Specifically, probably when I was in like my early 20s and just going, I know something's wrong. I don't know how to fix it or how to help it, though. I just know something's wrong and I need help. And thankfully, I've had really great friends along the way. My faith has led me to faith-focused yoga communities, faith-focused fitness communities, where there were a lot of women in particular, men too, but a lot of women in particular who rallied around each other in healing. And so I want to say that yoga has been a part of my healing journey. Faith has been a part of my healing journey, but also good, same gender friendships that were particularly non-judgmental, safe places for me to experience and say all that I was going through, right? And so that's why I'm here. I just keep going, well, I'll just keep sharing everything I'm learning and I'll just keep, putting myself out there, right? So we're going to go and we're just going to take a minute. We'll look at a couple of people attending live, but I would love for our live people attending to introduce yourself to one another, because even though there are a lot of people that are not going to be here live each day, I also want them to feel like they're a part of it. Okay, your live introductions, for the two of you who are here live, your live introductions and your questions and comments will later be taken out, so that when this is a self-study, your story won't be on blast, right? So I do want to say your introductions, everything you say, your comments, everything will be just for this group. When it's a self-study, it'll just be me on there. So I hope that makes sense. Any questions before we introduce ourselves? All right. Since I can see you, Stephanie, you want to kick us off?
I had a feeling I was going to have to go first. There was a 50-50 chance there. So I'm Stephanie. And honestly, I didn't think I was going to be able to take this course because I thought it was only going to be in person. And then I found out it was online and I got all jacked up because I'm looking for a safe space to work my shit out, and I'm coming out the gate with that, but that's it, right? And it's not just for my own sake. It really is like I can't stop seeing my 3 nieces and 1 nephew who are all under the age of 12. Like I have seen enough toxicity go unprocessed in my family. That I want it for myself and I want it for other people. And that really is it. And I am so I don't even have one word that I get to be doing this with you, Johnny, is like so special. And so thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being brave. And we're going to keep growing and brave in courage and resiliency together. So I'm excited for that too.
That is exactly right. And, you know, I have a couple of friends in my life right now that are dealing with families who they came out of the family and they're getting healthy, but the family dynamic is still really unhealthy. And they're going, how do I navigate this? You know what I mean? So with you. Thanks, Stephanie. How about you, Angie?
Certainly. Well, hello, I'm Angie Feuerstein from Washington. So it's a little earlier here. Glad we can do this online. Similarly, I thought, I remember seeing it and saw it online and then, or not online, that it was in person. Thought, oh, that's a bummer. So I suppose I woke up one morning and was thinking, I have this time period, it's kind of open, and this came back to mind again. And I thought, you know, this might fit. It was a little, what do you call it? Tug of war a little bit. I finished up my finalized cancer treatment last April, and I really had, yes, this is good.
Come on, Angie.
This is good. So I had this expectation like, okay, then I'll get back to normal. Well, lo and behold, it isn't normal. It's something different. And I've been literally, to be honest, I've just been stuck. The word I keep coming up with. And like the Lord lit up the gifts of the for the Spirit, and self-control was one. And it was like when you take a step to enroll in a class, so I feel like I've taken my first step of unstuck.
You absolutely have. You have no idea how big that and how true that is. I can tell you absolutely neurobiologically, Angela, that is true. Angie, sorry, I don't know why your full name came out. You are so right. That's not just a sentiment or a symbolic thing you're saying. That is absolutely true. Cling to that because you're absolutely right. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's good. Amen. I will take that. And my name is Angela, so I actually received that prophetically. That my name is Angela, God's messenger, and I have a message inside of me, and that is not something that you can have stuck. And it's dawning on me that might have been a little bit of trauma going through cancer treatment. And so literally stuck in my body, and but I'm ready to be who I'm meant to be. And yeah, that's good. That covers it.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love that. And here's the deal. This was going to be completely in person. That was the intention, was this was going to be just a small, exclusive in-person. The studio that we're in, I chose a wall right now because we're going to do a meditation at the end where I'm encouraged to sit back and lean against a wall. But it's where I filmed everything else, where the yoga mats are and everything. And this studio only fits about 10, 15 mats. It's an adorable little perfect studio that's around the corner from my house that a friend of mine owns and she lets me use. And then all of the 15 people registered online. I'm like, okay. don't know if it's like one of those like a prophet's not appreciated in their hometown type situations, but I swear every time I try to do an in-person training, everybody registers online. I'm like, okay, does nobody want to do in-person stuff anymore? Like, what's the deal? So yeah, here you guys go. You and Carrie and Sarah and Jessica, all the people who are all online. So, okay, here we go. We're still going to do it. So, so here's what I want you to do. Grab your manuals. I'm going to go through some just housekeeping stuff. Today will probably be a little shorter than usual just because many people are watching the recording. So as our first session goes, usually I'm tripping over myself trying to get everything out, but a lot of people are watching the recording. So unless you guys have a lot of questions, we'll probably end a little early tonight because it's about 90 minutes worth of material and then you just leave this buffer in for questions. So let's dive into the housekeeping information. So in your manual, everything I'm about to say is not in your manual. It's just kind of a little notes for you to keep track of. When we're doing this, I want to remind you, get your pen ready, because this is very serious, okay? I want to remind you, this is a training about trauma you've experienced. I know you're probably really shocked by that, by the title of the class, right? But this is going to potentially be a little bit difficult. Now, it's the good difficult. It's the sojourning difficult. It's the healing difficult. But I want to remind you about the difficult. And so with that being said, if you find yourself kind of lingering, I'm not going to use the word stop, but if you find yourself kind of lingering around some material, I'd like you to kind of trust your body, your gut, your heart, whatever little sentimental thing that people say, like follow your heart, follow your gut. You should, because your body recognizes things, especially with medical trauma, surgeries, births, childbearing issues. Like it remembers that, car accidents, if you were ever hit by someone. So your body starts to remember these things. And before your mind catches on that that's why you're resisting, your body knows. So I don't want to speak anything to it into existence, but if you're just like dreading watching a recording because you're doing this all on demand, ask yourself why. Is it because you really are stressed and you just don't have enough time and you maybe overscheduled yourself? Or might you actually, or your body or your mind or your heart be going, not yet. Or I'm gonna linger back over here for a minute. So if you want to re-watch a session and redo a yoga practice, instead of coming to the next session, I need you to know you're free to do that. So I've been leading teacher trainings for a long time now. I should probably do the math, like 16 years or something like that. And a lot of times we feel like we have to check every box before we can move to the next thing. Anyone? Like, I have to have all my homework complete before you go to the next class. I'd like to tell you, could you please throw that out the window? If you're just like, well, I want to come to the next one, but I didn't do the previous work, or I really want to just kind of move forward, then move forward. There might be something going on in this beautiful little vessel you have that isn't ready. And trust it. It's on demand. The recordings are there. Watch it when you want to watch them. Watch them back to back and then watch them again. Watch one and then don't come for a couple weeks. I know that sounds really weird, but this is not a certification. You're not a professional getting credentials. If you're a yoga teacher watching this so you can use it in your classes, great. But you have enough time to go through this. I hope that gives you freedom. I want to make sure that you understand too, the sessions, while 2 hours are set aside, I mean, please be patient if you go just a little bit over the practice, or there might be sessions where we have less to cover and there's just less in there. I put a 2-hour buffer in there so that it's just this window that we can make sure we cover everything. portal, the online portal where you go and access this material, is the call-in information for the live calls is always going to be there. The recording is always going to be there, and the manual is under the introduction or session 1. I can't remember. We do have a little quiz in there because we want to make sure you stay in that week and not move too far ahead. Because sometimes the portal will go, yeah, you've completed your session, when you didn't really complete your session, you just moved ahead. And so we have that little quiz in there to kind of help that not happen. But if for any reason you have any technological issues, you can just hit the chat feature on the website. If you have my phone number, you can reach out to me. That's my work phone number. So I have no problem giving that out. Grab it, call me, connect with me anytime. Even if you have a question about the content, I have really great boundaries around my time. I will take ownership of me, you take ownership of you, and don't tell yourself a lie like she doesn't want to hear from me or I'm just a bother to her. That's not true. If that was the case, I wouldn't answer the phone or I would push the call and address it later. Okay? You guys promise? Those of you who are here live, you promise? Okay, thank you. No, don't lie to yourself. It wastes a lot of energy. Wastes a lot of energy. One of the things I said as we kind of introduced ourselves was, this is from my training, yes, as a yoga teacher, massage therapist, anatomy and physiology professor, cadaver lab person, but I would like to say probably most of it, besides the sciencey stuff, is just my own healing. So I want to put a disclaimer out there that that doesn't mean I'm right. That means I've found something that works for me. So I need you to approach this information that way for you. Little ways we say that is take the meat and leave the bone, right? If I try to teach you something and you find yourself trying to implement that thing and you just keep hitting a wall, maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's something that won't work for you, and that's okay. That's okay. If you're a yoga teacher, a massage therapist, you know, yoga therapist, fitness teacher, you know, put it in your tool belt. But you don't have to try to fit yourself, if you're a round peg, into a square hole. Just make sure you understand that all of this is, it's like a big tool belt that you wear. And some days you pull out this one, and then some days that one is not going to work. I need this big bad boy over here, right? That's kind of how a lot of the stuff in this class is going to work. I want to start with this idea that we are starting to really gain language around this, not mainstream completely, but there are definitely niches and cliques of people that understand the word trauma. They understand the word trigger. We now are starting to have a new word called glimmers. Has anybody heard the term glimmer? Anybody? No? Okay. So just like there are triggers, which we'll talk about later. In other words, triggers are something that are similar in some sensual form. And when I say sensual, don't think sexual. That word has been hijacked. Think senses, right? Hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, feeling, extrasensory perception like gut feelings or hairs standing up. Those are sensing as well. There's something that in some way looks similar to what you experienced. And therefore, since your sweet little mind, heart, and body was hurt and is trying to help you survive, it's going to go, it's all happening again, right? We'll talk about it a lot. So those are called triggers. And then what happens sometimes, not with everyone, not all the time, but your body might go into the mode as if it's happening again. Now, this does not need to enter your consciousness. This process is usually unconscious. It's not even subconscious, right? So there's consciousness, there's subconscious that just right underneath your awareness, and then there's unconscious, right? These pre-wired responses that we have. And oftentimes when we're triggered, it's unconscious. We have to learn how to bring that into our consciousness through somatic tools, through therapy, through working with friends. If it's appropriate for your journey and your walk, prescription intervention, right? We have to do those things. Well, now there is this term for the opposite end of that spectrum, and it's called a glimmer. And it's a moment of peace, contentment, harmony. It's that moment, I like to call it a moment of grace and gratitude. It's that moment where you're like, ooh, I I think I am fully aware that I'm in my trauma in this moment and I don't have to let it control me. Sorry, I'm getting teary because they're wonderful, right? They're wonderful moments where you go, wait a minute, I think I've practiced meditation enough that I'm recognizing what's going on right here in this moment. And that, it's such a win. Like in my head right now, I'm hearing that ding, ding, ding when you get a knockout and they lift your hand up in the air and they're so excited, right? Like it's those moments where you're like, there's hope. There's hope, right? It's that moment at a family gathering where all the goodness is usually triggered out of you at that family gathering, but for a moment you have peace even if you're among it because you know you've grown past some of the reactions. Those are glimmers. And so we're starting to have language around trauma, glimmers, somatic tools, somatic practices, right? Mind-body connection. We're starting to have all of those things. And that's really cool that our mainstream world is starting to be able to talk about those things. So for you who are massage, fitness, or yoga professionals, it's really forward thinking of you to be in this class right now because we're going to talk in just a moment about what's normal and what's trauma, what's neurotypical, what's neurodivergent, because those 4 definitions are going to kind of help us very, very, very much moving forward as we start to understand the different ways that people think and process things and the timing in which we all deal with our crap, aka the effects of the trauma in our life, right? Any comments, questions as I'm talking? Anything you want to interject before we kind of actually like get into the manual? All right. Well, let's answer that first question. What is normal? I wanted to start with that, and this is why the first version of the manual took a minute because, of course, as any academic does, right? I said trauma is defined as, and I started doing that. I'm like, I feel like we should actually kind of look at this and explore this term of normal, because I would like to address the untrue myth that there is a normal childhood, a normal way that you're raised, and then everything else is trauma or dysfunction. Anybody? Can we for a moment, like, do we know anybody who's had a normal childhood? Because there's a couple of people in my life that I love very much. And for the first few years they were in my life, I would have thought their life was like this Norman Rockwell, June Cleaver, welcome home from school, honey, don't you like a cookie, right? Like I would have assumed that's what their life was like, right? Because on the outside looking in, they had the house, they had the picket fence, they had the multiple cars, dad had a good job, mom only worked part-time, so she was home most of the time. All the dinners were on the table every single night and mom made them. And so I just, from my super abusive traumatic background, was like, oh, wow, what was that like, right? Well, as I've gotten to know her, I'm like, ooh, like you are not allowed to emotionally process anything. God forbid you express any emotion other than happiness. And there is a fantastic rug in your family, and anytime there are those issues, it was all just swept right under that nice big old area rug, right? So what's normal? Who got to write the book? And I mean this, right? Like as we look at these even experts, right? Who wrote the book on parenting or what normal should look like? I remember, if we look back, I mean, do you remember those cigarette ads that used to say they were healthy for pregnant moms? Does anybody remember those? They were there, you guys. Do you remember in the 80s when everybody was in an uproar because they were making driving and drinking while you're driving, not drinking and driving, not driving drunk, drinking while you're driving illegal. And everybody got so upset about it. Like you can Google it right now. It's a woman and she's got a kid in her car. She's complaining about it too. She's complaining about the fact that she's had a long day at work and she should be able to have a beer on her way home. I remember when I was breastfeeding my son, So my son was 10 pounds, 22 inches long when he was born. He started walking at 8 months, 9 months, started getting teeth at 4 weeks. Like the kid just did everything super early, right? And I remember I went to the doctor because I was breastfeeding. He started to bite me, and I'd only been breastfeeding him for like 3 months. And I'm like, I want to keep breastfeeding him, but this is painful. Like blood is being drawn here, people. Like, tell me what I can do. And this pediatrician, who was recommended by someone, told me to pull him away, yell at him, bop him on the nose, and then set him on the bed and leave the room. And I quote, his fear of abandonment will make him stop. So that's the normal parenting advice I got that he did with his kids, and it worked just fine, right? Like, so what's normal? Because even these outside looking in normal situations are sometimes not normal. And I say that because I want you to destigmatize yourself from thinking that you are set apart as this traumatized person and nobody out there could possibly understand things that you've gone through. Because in particular, people who are in this live training, I'm looking at your beautiful faces, and you both have shared with me certain things that have happened to me that you completely identified. And we've bonded over them. So did you have Johnny Goodmanson's experience of her borderline personality disorder, schizoaffective, drug-addicted mother? No. But did you experience aspects that I also experienced that we have this common connection around? Yes, and that's the closest thing that one could possibly get. So if we can stop walking around going, I'm not normal, they're normal. We gotta stop doing that. It creates division that we don't even know is there. So I want to really encourage us that way. And that's why I wanted to do that whole, what is normal? Any of you guys have anything you want to add to that?
I think I believe like getting rid of the myth of normal is so helpful because it does it keeps me from going into victim mentality
Oof.
and building up barriers between people where it's so interesting because we are all so unique. And by not giving into the myth of normal, I can embrace someone else's uniqueness and be unified in that.
Yes.
Right? You get what I'm
Yes.
saying? Yeah.
Yes. So good. So good.
That's awesome, Stephanie. The word that came to mind for me was when you said that leads to division, then the opposite of that would be community, which is awesome. And it's I think maybe what you can call this lie is no one could understand, or it's only happened to me. It's true, what happened to you is exclusive, but I think an understanding of this shared, well, what does the Bible say? In this world, you will have trouble.
That's right.
I just read that this morning. Solomon said, I despaired of life because it is so troubling. It's a common condition, and the enemy wants to exclude us and separate us and say, oh, poor you, it's just you. No one understands. So I'm looking forward to that kind of community. Gotta be honest, wasn't thinking about it when I signed up, but part of me was like, wow, this is just going to be like kind of like free therapy. We're going to make progress in community.
You are.
Well, this is true. You understand. Bonus.
Totally understand. Totally understand. And so I want to say for those of you who aren't with us today, so someone just mentioned how this community, it does the opposite of what the trauma lies to us. Like, I'm not normal, they're all normal, I'm divided, I'm separated, no one can understand me, I'll put a crust over my heart and never let anybody in, right? Tearing down that wall invites community. Now, could you get hurt in community? Absolutely, I've been hurt in community. But you just got to get yourself up, dust yourself off, and find the right community. And even in the right community, you're going to get hurt. Listen, hurt people, but also normal people hurt people. People just hurt people because we're all hurting. And so this is so beautiful, but if we can let go of that normal definition, then I think we might have an easier time approaching other people and letting them in to our hearts. Because I'll tell you, the people that I have let into my heart, that I've let speak into me, that I've let spoon me through tears on a yoga mat, yes, I have done that multiple times. The power of that healing is so much more powerful than the people who have ever hurt me. Love is most certainly greater than fear, pain, division, anything like that, right? So let's go ahead and actually dive in, now that we're 30 minutes in, to our actual manual. So let's go ahead and define trauma, right? They refer to this as experienced indirectly or directly. I'm not a reader word for word from a manual when I'm teaching. I kind of just go through and hit the bits, and then we kind of make it conversational. So I'm just kind of in that first part of the paragraph where I've given you that website to see the definition. But basically, it's whatever the experience it is, it leads to significant and severe subjective distress. That word is going to be really important in just a moment. But it's direct or indirect, right? We have to recognize that, because let's say there's a really horrific car accident. It would be no question that the people who were in the both vehicles, whatever the mode of the accident was, are traumatized, right? But what we also want to recognize is witnessing that can be traumatizing. That would be an example of indirect trauma, right? Witnessing that. A good example of that is my husband and I used to go from Phoenix to Minnesota a lot, but we would drive because we were poor and had babies. So we could not afford for our whole family to fly. So we'd load up and hop in the minivan, and we would drive from Phoenix to Minneapolis. Part of that, sometimes, depending on the route that my husband would choose to take, was to go through Vegas, which, if any of you know or know that area very well, from Phoenix to Vegas, it is nothing, right? So one day we were driving back, it might have been from Idaho. These are all insignificant details, sorry. We were driving back, and the kids were sleeping, and I happened to wake up. My husband struggles with insomnia, so he would often drive overnight. So I woke up just in time. I woke up, I did this bit, I sat up, and I looked forward, and I've always had really good vision. So before he could see it, I saw something in the road. And I kind of leaned forward, and I went, "What is that?" And we both at the same time went, "Oh!" It was a person. And it was unfortunately someone who had been ejected from their car. And so he was going, Nevada desert, right? So he was going 85 and rounded this corner, and we both went, just like that. And he had to slow down pretty abruptly, and he pulled over. And so I, at the time, taught first aid and CPR. And both of us, our hands went on the door immediately to go see if this person needed help. And being a teacher of first aid and CPR, thankfully I remembered the very first thing you have to do is make sure it's safe for you. Well, he was in the middle of the road, and standing in the middle of the road on a corner where people are rounding it at 85 miles an hour is not safe. One. Two, the last thing you want to do is move someone who's been in a car accident if you're not qualified, right? Because if you have a spinal injury, you can make it worse, you can kill them, whatever. So he goes to get out of the car, and I went, "Josh, you can't get out of the car. We're not safe. Like, the kids are in the back seat, all these things. We need to move over. We need to." So we turned the vehicle on and shined it on the person, of which I'm having, as a first aid CPR certified person, to look at this thing, right? And look at this scene, right? And it was so sad, you guys. Now, this has been 18 years ago, so I've retold the story many times. But there was laundry strewn all over the ground. Like, it looked like, hold on, sorry. It looked like a college student who was maybe driving home or something, right? And it was hot, and so he had no shirt on, so he had road rash all over. And it was very clear he was no longer alive after we sat there and made sure it was okay. So we called the police. The police came. They said, yes, his body had been there for hours. He had been gone a long time ago, right? That is an example of indirect trauma. for both myself and my husband. So the thing does not have to happen directly to you for it to be traumatizing to you. That is an example of indirect. So they go on in the second part of this paragraph to describe the effects. It says mental health trauma is ubiquitous and frequently experienced throughout the lifespan. The sequelae of traumatic experiences, the effects of what you experience, is functional impairment, which can result in a decreased quality of life, morbidity, and poorer health outcomes. So what we know now is trauma cannot be separated. Now, this definition doesn't say this. This is me saying this now. You can't separate emotional trauma from physical trauma, from medical trauma, from mental trauma, right? Like, our mind is in our body. Our emotions have a mind and body. Our spirit is housed in our body. There isn't a such thing as, oh, it was emotionally traumatizing. Okay, if it was emotionally traumatizing, it was physically traumatizing. You had a course of hormones go through your body. So it involves your body. There really isn't the compartmentalization of trauma. That's what we're learning. If you've read the book, it's a tough read. It's a gruesome read, but it's a good read for understanding this, called The Body Keeps the Score. I did not make it required reading because it can be traumatizing for some people to read it. There were parts that even I, in what I do, had to skip, because I knew if I read it, I would have replay in my mind of what it was. And so it's this experience of understanding, if you've experienced something, your heart, soul, mind, strength, body, muscles, skin, lungs, everything experienced it. Everything experienced it. So if we could just, like, could you put your pen down and sit up for a second and just sit back for a second and just hold a space for yourself for a minute? For all these experiences that your sweet little heart and your body have experienced, even just really, really stressful days where you feel like the weight of the whole world is on your shoulders. You guys, that has been my life for like the last 5 or 6 months. It has been very heavy to carry the weight of my life right now. Can you just give yourself a freaking second before you just expect yourself to move on? And if there's nothing else from today that you take out of it, could you just be a little nicer to yourself? Could you just recognize that nobody has had an optimal June and Ward Cleaver experience? Not one person. So maybe, as an aside, you could also just maybe hold a space for that person that gets on your last damn nerve too. That person that does not hold a space for you and you get really frustrated with, they're experiencing the same thing. And this is where many of you know that I am of the Christ-centered faith. This is where I firmly believe the scripture that says our battles are not with flesh and blood. In other words, they're not with another person, even if that other person directly hurt you because you're you. Like, I have someone in my life who I am the villain in their story. They wholeheartedly believe that it is my fault, right? Even that person I am asked to hold a space for, because my battle is not with that person. My battle is with dark powers at work in this world, like abuse and things like that. And if you are not of a worldview that believes evil is present, everybody has their own interpretations of things, but I don't understand how we can look at what happened in the Holocaust or certain things that happen in sex trafficking and not think evil is absolutely alive and well. And I think it's our job as light workers, salt and light workers, yoga teachers, massage therapists, fitness teachers, right, to push back that darkness. And it's tiring, right? Like, it's your job if you're a mom to do it for your kids. If you're a spouse or have a significant other, there's a role we play with them, our friends. And that's not even counting people who do it for a living, like myself, or yoga teachers, or fitness teachers, or massage therapists, or counselors, and therapists, and psychiatrists, right? It's our job as light workers to push that darkness back. So that means if we got beef with someone, it might help us to not realize our beef is not with that person. Now, with that being said, I'm not saying you got to be besties with people who hurt you. I have no contact with that person. I unfortunately had to have no contact with my mom. I hadn't spoken to her in a year when she died. But I'm not saying that you guys are besties. I'm not saying you gotta link arms and figure it out. Sometimes it's unfigure-outable. That person who sees me as the villain in their story is mentally ill. On this side of glory, I don't think there's any getting through to that person. Thoughts on that? Anywhere where you're like, but ooh, I'm gonna throw up a little bit. Stephanie. Yeah, kind of do.
I isn't laughing so good. It's good. There's tears here and laughter here, and I love it.
Really good.
I was, as you were talking, one, I really appreciate like the way you're presenting things is I'm hearing over and over, whether you've actually spoken it or not, give yourself permission. Give yourself permission, right? And so I am giving myself permission to take things one day at a time and to be okay, like we talked about at the beginning, with being tired. Like I had an experience with some people that are that can be challenging to love, and I'm learning how to love them this past weekend. And it was so hard to be a part of it, but in real time, I was seeing, I was able to see the trauma that I grew up in, like the dysfunction in real time. And in that, I didn't become dysregulated in that. And then I got to walk away from that. And I'm just learning to give myself permission in all of these different ways that you're expressing, like to be okay with feeling tired from that. Even it's been 48 hours now and I still feel tired. And so I'm thank you for encouraging us. Like, it's not just you giving us permission. We get to give ourselves permission. You know what I mean? To feel all the things and to set the boundaries we need to set and all of that, and not be motivated by guilt or shame, but in love.
Yeah. Guilt and shame resonate at a frequency of death. Literally, I don't mean that like, oh yeah, they're not good for us. Like, no, the frequency that they resonate is very close to a corpse. Like they don't produce life at all.
I'm thinking about holding space as kind of maybe creating opportunity too, where you may not be aware of what's really going on. Sometimes it's apparent, sometimes it's latent, and you're like, what's wrong with me? And that holding space can maybe give you a minute to let it come up and to dawn on you.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I say, if there's ever a time you don't feel like coming to class, that might be happening. Something might be coming up that you're just like, I'm exhausted, or you're not consciously doing this, but your body is telling you, I'm exhausted, I can't process that right now. And we don't like that, right? Especially as Americans, we want a timeline. I started an 8-week thing. I want to get through this portion of my trauma in this week, and I want to get through this portion of my trauma in the next one. It's like, oh, that's not how it works. That's absolutely not how trauma works. That's not how the Holy Spirit healing works. That's not how wisdom works. That's just not how it works. And I'm so sad to say that. I'm so sorry to say that, but that is not how it works.
Well, then how does it work? When you hold a space for yourself and you feel it not moving, what are we looking for? what are we looking for?
Yeah. Signs that have been my experience would be, one, just patience. But another thing is, I wrote it on my list today. It says amore fati. You ever heard the term amore fati? It's in my blog for tomorrow. It's in my newsletter. You guys will get it. You'll see it. But it's love your fate.
Ah,
If you can fall in love with where you are, like if you could just see where your stuckness or where your struggle is, if you could just see your inner 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, which you've already spoken to it, so I'll speak to your Cancer. If you could see yourself as your friend, and your friend will like, oh, I struggle on, you know, and you'd be like, look, but you're not ready. Just wait. I'll wait here with you as long as it takes. I'll just wait with you. You're worth the wait. So I would say, first of all, patience. What also is a big thing that I found in my life is Stephanie just said, give yourself permission. Give yourself permission for it to take a hot minute. And sometimes that's all you need. I think that's why we can go, as soon as I surrendered, the universe brought me all this stuff. I've heard that a lot, right? And I don't mind it when people say that, because even though I have a Christ-centered worldview, I believe that he's the God of the universe. So if the universe is sending me something, then God is sending me something, right? Whatever, I don't care if people use that language. And so if you could welcome the healing, and a part of the welcoming of the healing is letting go of the definition of what you think that should look like. So what I have found in my walk is that when I think it should look a certain way, what you focus on does what? Has anybody ever heard this term? What you focus on, anybody know what that term is in the yoga world? What you focus on expands.
Grows bigger. Yeah.
Yes.
Oop.
What you focus on expands. So if you're thinking your feeling should look this way, and you've got all this healing happening over there, what am I focusing on? Am I seeing anything over here? No, I'm zeroed in on this is what it should look like. And so I'm not over here going, oh my goodness, look at this, right? Because Angie, with you in particular, if I could, I don't know if what you're saying is speaking to this, and you don't have to say anything, but may I say it? Feel the need to ask permission. Of course, this will be edited out. Obviously, none of this back and forth will be in it. You don't have the same body you did pre-cancer treatment. There's
it's different.
pieces, well, but there's also healthy pieces of your body missing.
Yeah, and capacity is different. Yes, I had reconstruction. That was why I had to go through 3 surgeries.
So in your head, you might be operating with that body from a year ago. But you have a new body. You're in a new body. And so there might be a disconnect. Because your body, in its wisdom, it knows how to move forward, but you're going, but I used to be able to do this, and I used to be able to do that, and this, before I had cancer, I could run a mile, you know, and again, you're like this. All this healing is happening over here, and you're like this. And I'm not saying that's what's happening for you. I'm just saying that's been my experience. So patience, acceptance of where you are right now, and then like Stephanie said, invite it. Let yourself be different. Let yourself be tired. Let yourself feel frustration. Let yourself get angry. In your case in particular, cancer sucks, man. That sucks that happened to you. And you could go, well, yeah, but other people have it. I don't know. Other people. That sucks. That sucks that it happened to you. It sucks that your kids had to endure that. It sucks that your husband had to endure that. And that can all be okay that you think it sucks. It's not positive to not recognize or to recognize that it happened. In fact, it holds a space to go, yeah, Angie, I am so sorry. Because if I came up to you, Angie, I know your heart is massive. It's bigger than your own body. If I came to you and said, this sucks so bad, you would hold me and you would hold my head and you would wipe my every tear and go, I know, it's not right. You're a good person. This shouldn't be happening to you, Johnny. Like, so can you do that for you? And I'm not asking you that so you can answer out loud. I'm just saying, honestly, that's what you need to reflect on this week. Can you do that for you? Because you're the only one who's going to be able to do that for you. Nobody around you is going to take care of you like you can take care of you. Just like no one can beat you up around you like you can beat you up. I hope that helps.
Amen. It does.
Yeah. Yeah. As we look at the bottom of those notes, it says, you know, there are two types of categories of this, chronic and acute. All that means is one may experience something and it lasts a short period of time. One may experience something and it lasts a long period of time. And we were just talking about medical trauma. Someone can have a cancer experience where, God willing, they find it and it's a lower stage and it's completely contained and has really clean margins. They cut it out, it's done. And you were scared for a minute, but it's okay and you're healed and it was never going to be life-threatening. Best case scenario, right? And then there's people that I have in my life who have had cancer and it's recurred 3, 4, 5 times. That's chronic, right? I have a good person in my life who just loved him so much. He was broadsided by a motorhome on a motorcycle in his 20s. He has had surgery after surgery after surgery after medical trauma after surgery. And so that just leads to the amount of time. But again, healing has its own timeline. So it's not like it cleanly fits into this acute bucket or this chronic bucket. It's all commingled and intertwined, right? It's all commingled and intertwined. So if we look at this, you know, the best definition that they found, the last sentence in that paragraph is acute is not prolonged. That's the only way we can kind of differentiate the two. One's prolonged, one's not, right? The original meaning of that word is wound. It was a wound of some kind. And again, don't think physical wound. Like the only people who have been traumatized are people who were beaten when they were kids. No. There's emotional abuse, there's physical abuse, there is spiritual abuse, there's racial abuse, right? There's all these different kinds of abuse. And you are a mind, a heart, and a soul in a body. So if it happened to your mind, it happened to your whole thing. If it happened to your heart, it happened to the whole thing. If it happened to the spirit, it happened to the whole thing. If it happened to your body, it happened to the whole thing. There is no separation. That's why, and that's the really great news, that somatic tools are really effective no matter what kind of trauma you've experienced. Because what we've learned is we used to think it was all up here where the solutions were. I'm going to think my way through it. I'm going to talk my way through it. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to know how to move forward. And we're going, oh no, actually what we're learning is if you get the body first, then the mind gets on board. We're starting to learn that. And we'll talk about that later with power poses and things like that. So the original meaning of this word means wound. So we've already talked about the fact that it could be any aspects of what those are, but in your body, it's your story. And so this is where we get to have this amore fati, we get to experience this because nothing is ever wasted. In fact, every spiritual teacher of every religious or spiritual discipline will agree, suffering is one of the greatest teachers. Now, there's certain disciplines that say unnecessary suffering is unnecessary, like Buddhism. We don't have to unnecessarily suffer. I happen to subscribe to some of those things. I personally, as an anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder, I've never been diagnosed with that, but definitely obsessive tendencies. Not compulsions, thank goodness, but definitely obsessive thoughts. I bring unnecessary suffering on myself in my anxiety-ridden state. Now, I did not just say it's my fault. Did you hear that? Because if you did, let me back up. I bring suffering on myself, and it is not my fault. It is, however, my responsibility once I know I'm doing that. For instance, right now, I'm under more pressure than I've ever been in my life since I left my abusive situation. And a lot of the stress and pressure that are happening as a result of that is because I'm believing the lie that I have to take care of it and everyone around And so I'm taking on a lot of unnecessary things. I'm attaching myself to a lot of non-truths in my attempt to do that. And so I am having to take major stock and inventory almost every day, which we talk about tired. I haven't been this spiritually tired in a really long time. A really long time. So while it's not my fault, it is my responsibility to begin to do it, which is why you guys are all here, right? You recognize I have a role in this. I'm not a victim. I have a role in this, in my healing, but it's not my fault, right? But this story is written on your body, right? And so I think sometimes we go, especially people who've had medical trauma or car accident or whatever, I used to be able to do this, or I used to be able to do that, or whatever. Yes, but you had this incredible experience that changed you in every aspect of your being. And so maybe now you can't run, or now your body is shaped differently, right? But that changed you in so much more of an impactful way on the inside than it ever could have had on your body. And so we've got to, if we can, realize where we're doing that and stop throwing our body shade. Be gentle with your body. It is doing so much more than you think you're putting on it. Right? Like, think of how old you are. This heart has been beating inside my chest for 45 years. These knees have been exercising to a demand I've placed on it for 45 years. These hips and this belly birthed 2 children, right? These arms love those children, and my husband and the people in my life who went to retreats, and right? Be patient with that body, because your story, your testimony of overcoming all this trauma is written on this body. If your body is the paper, then your central nervous system is the pen, and hormones are the ink, and it tells a story. Please don't hate that story. And if there are aspects of that story you hate, get your journal out and start writing about it. Because my hope would be, as we go through this process, you would begin to unwind blame, shame, guilt, and self-hatred from your story. Because what we know about trauma is that, unfortunately, even though someone inflicts it upon us, especially children, tend to blame themselves as if it's their fault. I know that is my story. I wondered for years what was wrong with me that my mom couldn't love me. I wondered for years what was wrong with me. What was I doing wrong? I couldn't help her as a 7-year-old withdraw from opioids, right? But that's what we do, is we are incredibly selfish beings. Again, my worldview is Christ-centered, so I do believe we're born into this world in a unique brokenness. And because we are so self-focused, it's understandable why a kid would blame themselves. We are little narcissists, all of us running around this world. And so it's actually an immense form of growth to start to detach yourself from that narcissism of thinking, no, it's your fault. And hear me, I'm not calling you a narcissist, I'm just saying we tend to be so self-focused. And so we have to interrupt the cycle of our thoughts. How do we do that? Well, you have to interrupt the cycle of your thoughts. So often, this trauma happens as kids. I have to use this bolster. I have this bolster sitting here because we're going to do a meditation later, but I went on this nice, wonderful hike, and my body was like, yeah, you're not going to do that again for a little while, right? So I keep shifting because my knee is bothering me. So thank you. If you are neurodivergent and the movement is distracting you, thanks for your patience. But we have to interrupt that cycle, and we have to, if you look at your notes, it says, so often trauma occurs when we are vulnerable and unable to help ourselves. So what our mind does, and brings our heart and body along with it, is says, I will never let that happen again. Because that's what your mind is there to do. It's there to help you survive. It's not there to help you be happy. It's there to help you survive. That's what you're wired for. And so your mind and heart and your body, everything will go, that's never going to happen again. And so you start to work to control your environment. Maybe you fight as your response, right? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Maybe you're a fighter. I will fight so this will never happen again. Maybe you're a fleer. I will run anytime I see danger, so that will never happen again. Maybe you surrender and you freeze. I will cut you out so that won't happen again. I just will freeze in my responses to you. Maybe you fawn and just surrender and let someone do something to you and you become a doormat because you just feel like it's all your fault, right? Whatever your response is, in some form, you're responding in that way so that it will never happen. And so what we have to do is we have to disrupt and unpack all those agreements that we made whenever the hell we made them, because you were likely totally unaware you were making it. And so this unpacking, you're going to need some divine help. You have likely blocked some of that out. You have likely forgotten that, especially if you're a fleer. Fleers love to just put it out of your mind, right? Fighters will remember, right? Think about someone who's bitter and they go, I will never forget, right? Like fighter, oh, right? And we tend to remember, and I'm a fighter. I'm not a fleer, and I rarely run. That's my problem. That's not my problem. It's definitely something I've had to overcome. I will let people keep hurting me because I'm not a fleer. And so now I'm getting more wise and I'm walking away sooner. But it took me a really long time to learn to go ahead and flee, babe. It walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's happening again. Get the heck out of Dodge, right? So depending on your unique response of your brain's hardwired response to protect you, there's certain cycles that you have to interrupt, and that's what we're going to spend the next 7 weeks after this kind of doing, is getting out of those things, right? And so that's where trigger comes in, right? Your brain, anytime you are triggered, in other words, anytime there's anything that see, taste, touch, smell, sounds like, I've been here before, something, you are so smart that unconsciously, you don't even know what's happening, you start to make decisions to say, do, go, whatever, because you think it's happening again, right? And it's not until we have those glimmer moments where we go, oh, this is similar, but I'm cognizant enough and aware enough to know that this is not happening again. Now my body might be responding. I might be not feeling good. I might have been struggling. I might not want to be here, right? In the case of like getting together with family. But you're able to differentiate that it's not all happening again. Those first few glimmers they're so exciting because you're like, oh my gosh, okay, there is hope for me. There is hope for me. It's not always going to feel this way, right? Isn't it exciting? And if you haven't had one yet, it'll come. Again, that invitational healing, you gotta let it come, because sometimes the coping strategy is I won't let anything good in because I don't ever want to be disappointed again, right? So, boy, it's multifaceted and very complex, all these things that we're talking about, right? But what triggers help you to do, because they can be good. I don't want to villainize triggers because sometimes they're right. Sometimes they're right. And it is happening again. I had that recently in my life. One of my unique traumas is that when I meet a really powerful, loving person, boy, do I just give my whole self over to them, particularly women. Surprise, surprise. My mom was my abuser. Are we shocked? And so there is a person in my history that I did that with, and for years and years and years did that with, and then I left that person and I went to this other place, and there was another really loving, powerful woman. Boy, did I just scooch right in there and just attach myself to it. This time I recognized it in only 2 years of going, oh wait, oh, I'm doing it all over again. okay, but I'm not as deep this time. And I didn't do or say anything that makes this not redeemable. You know, in fact, this is really good that I see it while it's happening. How cool is that, right? And I'm sure there's another, because I have chosen to let particularly women into my life, I'm sure it's going to happen again. Like, you guys know it, my trigger is really powerful women. How powerful are women in general? Like, we're the ones who give birth and like raise humans. Like, yeah, we're really powerful. It's clearly going to happen again. And I will be more wise, and I will be more calm, and I will be strong, and I will hopefully see it before I get in too deep, right? That's the hope of healing. It's not that it will never happen again. At least hasn't been my experience. I hope that for you in your experience, but that's been my experience. So what makes the difference between me experiencing something and it was really traumatic, and you experiencing the exact same thing and going, that was not my experience of that person at all, Johnny. I experienced that same person. That was not my experience at all, right? It's called resiliency factor. That's the next paragraph in your notes. It's called the resiliency factor. There is this X factor that they have not been able to explain in trauma, of two people can experience the exact same car accident and come out completely different. One, crippled and unable to get into a car again. My friend has a friend, two of them in particular, who are in their early 20s, graduated from college and don't drive because one's significant other was in a car accident and one, a significant person in their life died. Right? And then there are people who are in 3 or 4 car accidents and they go on to continue to drive a motorcycle. And you're like, you were in a motorcycle accident. How can you drive a motorcycle, right? But it didn't affect them like it would have another person. That's just called a resiliency factor. It's just this X factor experience for certain people with certain experiences that it doesn't, to the depth that it does another person, cause an incapacitating experience. And some of those factors are, you know, it talks about this, and some of those factors are their spiritual experience, their emotional experience, their family experience. What outlets do they have with friendships to talk about it, right? And that's a big one with resiliency, because there are certain people that are sometimes not safe to be around after you've experienced trauma. I know someone in my life who has lost a spouse, and they were married for like 40 plus years, and one of them cared for the other, the one that did pass, so their caregiver. It's been 18 months, and that person is not even beginning to fully grieve. And we sometimes well-intended go, you're still struggling so much, it's been 1.5 years. Which is a somewhat innocent question, I understand, but yeah, they were with that person over 40 years. And their heart was completely entwined with that person. In fact, did you know that there's now studies that show when you're married with a person, or even just live in close proximity for years and years and years, you share DNA. Like if you took my blood, you would find Josh Bigmanson's DNA in it. That's crazy, the collective consciousness of humanity and how we're created to connect. So yeah, they need a little longer than 1.5 years. Whereas you meet some people who, I had a coworker whose husband, she was young too, oh my gosh, late 50s, she was young, whose husband very suddenly passed, or at least to my knowledge, it was very sudden now as I say that. She came to work on Monday, it happened on a Thursday, she was at work on Monday. I was like, and I had to walk past her office to get to my office, and I literally went to my office like this. No, you're lucky if I ever come back to work, if anything happens to that precious man in my life. You're gonna be lucky if I come back, right? That's just the thing with resiliency. And then beyond the resiliency factor of one person or another person experiencing the same thing, It's a whole spectrum on the things you can experience. You can dump, for instance, something else, well, I don't want to dump on you. I don't know what it is, but I can just let your stuff go. I don't have an issue. Like both of you have, that are here live in the room with me, that you've called me before and told me things. And one of you in particular is, I don't want to dump it out. I have a supernatural ability to hear all of your hurt, cry with you, and then hang up the phone and move on. Like I probably would have been a really great therapist because I can do that. But my kids, that's a whole different story. My husband, so there's certain things I'm really resilient in, and then other things I'm not. And that's just the nature of healing. Questions, comments, you guys got anything want to say?
I'm thinking about, well, I was thinking about this idea of not expecting our bodies, even from day to day, even when we don't go through cancer, we don't go in a car accident, but just the way that our bodies are, what does it look like for me to give myself permission to not demand from my body what it can't provide just because I'm a day older? You know what I mean? Like the trauma that I have, like that was, I was raised in a family where it was very much image, like body image, like you had to look a certain way, and the plastic, all that, like the Barbie look, right? And I'm just like, that is its own form of trauma, not even going through like an acute trauma, like a car accident or whatever. And so I'm just kind of that, when you were encouraging and asking Angie questions about her body, it made me tear up, because I'm like, how am I expecting of my body what it just can't give, again, because I'm just a day older. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. And now too with fitness, sorry, menopause. I know what it's going to come out any second. I know what I'm trying to say. Fitness research. Fitness research. We know that when you're stressed, you should not go do a really hard workout. And that's what we do, right? We just do our normal workout every day. And what we now know is, no, if your central nervous system is shot, you're keeping it in fight or flight to continue to work out at a really hard, stressful level. That actually, even though you body dysmorphic issues should tell you work out hard, push, oh no, you need like a gentle something. You've got to interact that. But if you're doing like push, cardio, you're making it worse. You're not giving yourself space to heal.
Okay, I want to understand that. You mean, yeah. Well, when you said that, if you go on a workout that increases your flight or fright, you're like, you're still running. Like, I'm trying to understand. You mean by exercising and going and like doing the physical running activity, that's mirroring what you're doing, and so that's not helping you. Am I understanding that right?
Yes. So potentially it's not helping you. It's not an across the board rule, but for instance, your central nervous system has a brake and a gas. That's all it has. Stimulate or sedate. That's all it knows how to do, right? If you are already in fight or flight, a stimulative workout, just think about it like this. If you're super stressed out and you're really nervous about a presentation, should you drink coffee?
Okay.
No,
yeah, that makes
it's
sense.
just stimulate, right? So if you're already stimulated, the last thing you want to do is a really hard stimulating workout. Physically, you actually want to put the brake. Let's pump the brakes, body, right? Now, it doesn't have to be like surrender or a yin yoga class. Just the way you approach the workout. Like I love, because of my body dysmorphic issues from years ago, I love really hard workouts where you push really hard. I love that feeling of tired. I love the feeling of accomplishment. And now that I'm 45, I've got a little funky couple of things that my body's going, hey honey, could you not jump so much, babe? Like when they do jumping jacks, maybe you just do the side lift. You're still burning the calories, you're still doing the things, but could you just stop? You know what I mean? And so I'm learning to listen to her and go, oh, totally, right? And so that's part of it is they do say that women in their 40s, menopause is like a whole new beast. And so they don't know if those really hard workouts are as helpful as they were when you were in your 30s and 20s. Not that you shouldn't work out hard ever, but like me right now, fully in menopause, just so you know too much about me, general public, on and off periods, all this just weird stuff, and in the most intensively stressful period I've been since I was living with my abuser. Not doing hard workouts right now. I'm walking, I'm doing yoga, I'm going to some of those classes once a week, once every 2 weeks, and I'm slowing way down from what the instructor is telling us to do. I'm not jumping and pounding, I'm not doing no plank jump backs and all that stuff. And I'm finding that my knee is getting better, and I have more energy, and so I'm trying to slow down a little bit. I hope did that bring clarity?
Totally, yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Kind of disappointing, isn't it, at first?
Yeah.
But it's true. It is what it is. Okay, so with these resiliency factors, kind of picking back up in your notes, right? And the paragraph that says there is a spectrum on which trauma is experienced, right? So with the fact that the trauma is experienced on a spectrum, right? From just someone barely yelling at you and that kind of scares you because you're a natural people pleaser kid to being sexually traumatized, right? We're all on this spectrum. And the fact that we all have different resiliency factors, can we really now that we've been talking about this for over an hour, can we just crash the hell out of the idea that there's normal? And we just let that go completely after this conversation? That because of different resiliency factors, because of different experiences, and because we are the totality of a heart, soul, mind, and strength, anything to happen to one happens to all, can we just crush the idea that there's anything wrong about anything that's going on this third rock from the sun that we're all trying to do life on? And nobody wrote a book telling us how to do it. And most of the books by 50 years later, they're outdated. And we go, oh, wow, lots of new research. Turns out, not only should you not just ignore your kids like we did in the 80s, you should also not helicopter them like we did in the early 2000s and 90s, right? Because we just flop back and forth. Remember the commercials? It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your kids are? Like, why do we have to have commercials like that? Because we were completely neglected in the 80s. So then those 80s kids who were latchkey and completely neglected went and did the exact opposite and like helicoptered their kids. And that wasn't a good response either, right? So we don't know what we're talking about ever. None of us know what we're talking about. We're just literally blinding the mind out here, man. Like, that's all we are. And then we get into our 40s and maybe we got a little bit together, so we might tell someone else and give them some advice. That's all we want, right? So we're all on this spectrum. It happens to every aspect of who we are. So now I'll go ahead and turn the page to where the DSM-5, right, which that's probably updated now too, and there's all different kinds of books out there, but they've got a set of bullet points here. We're not really going to go through them individually, right, but it just goes to show you this is some of the criteria required to diagnose someone with post-traumatic stress disorder. In other words, you experience something traumatic and you've not yet moved on from it. Again, I don't like the word disorder. Post-traumatic stress condition is what I wish they would have called it, because you aren't disordered. You are a loving spiritual being that experienced a disordered thing. You're not disordered, right? It's a condition you're now living with as a result of an adverse experience. And those are some of the things that they use to decide if someone had CPTSD. Let me just tell you the complication of this. Let me just tell you how complicated this is. I have spent my life teaching yoga, trauma, massage, overcoming trauma, healing, all of those things. Do you guys know that I didn't make the connection or correlation that I had CPTSD and therefore was neurodivergent until about 5 years ago? And you'd probably go, how could you have not? Of course you had CPTSD. But that's what we do, right? We minimize, we figure out ways to work around it, and therefore I guess I have 2 legs and I walk around like normal people, so I must be normal, right? And now that I understand I'm neurodivergent, oh my goodness, I don't know if it's because I'm in my 40s or what, but man, I'm awesome. I can't believe I did some of the things I did thinking I was normal and I wasn't. I can't believe some of the situations I've walked into and been successful in that I had no business being successful in those situations. And it's what it's done for me is gone, man, you are awesome. And I hope that you, and the 2 of you who are in this room with me, beyond all of you watching this, in the comfort of your coffee shops and living rooms, I hope you realize how awesome you are, that you've gotten this far, with how messed up everything is, and how messed up your parents probably were, not even meaning to be, intending to love you and do the best job ever, but still human and living in a broken world. So as we kind of look forward, we got to talk about scope of practice for just a moment. For those of you who are yoga teachers, fitness teachers, massage therapists, any kind of a professional looking to use any of this information beyond your own personal development, we have to talk about scope of practice, because we are not doctors, we are not counselors, we are not therapists. There are certain things we cannot do and say. In particular, in that paragraph, you have to recognize that you cannot diagnose, treat, prescribe, cure, or claim to cure anything with anything that you're doing. You can say things like, I have found meditation to be a great tool for my experience, and what I have found yoga. Research shows that yoga is beneficial for those experiencing blah, 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 blah. You can say very generic, objective terms, but you can't say subjective terms or suggest that someone do something because of X, Y, Z. If there is any confusion of that, we have to clear this up, and you need to I'm going to read this whole paragraph for that reason, because it's very important that we understand that we're not psychiatric therapeutic professionals. We are almost like paraprofessionals over on the side that have learned some really great tools that someone might seek us out for if they're experiencing certain things, but we cannot prescribe them. We cannot claim that they are a way to cure a thing. We cannot say, since you're experiencing this, do this. Even as a yoga teacher, even as a credentialed, insured yoga teacher, if somebody walks up to you and goes, I have a back surgery, I have low back issues, what poses should I do? I have a default answer, and I have had to use this many times over the years being a yoga teacher trainer and an anatomy and physiology professor, because there's this illusion that I could just give you any answer, right? And I might know what you need, but I can't say it because I don't have the right credentials. So for instance, I might say something like, well, I can't speak to your body in particular. Done, I've just absolved myself from the liability. I have found my low back issues are in the deep part of my low back, and doing back bends have helped me strengthen it as long as I do it correctly. There's the other piece of the potential. As long as I do it correctly. Well, what's correctly? Now you're within your credentials. I can show you how to do a back bend correctly. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm credentialed to show you how to do a back bend correctly. I'm not credentialed to prescribe that as a solution to your low back pain. So this paragraph says, knowing and discussing your scope of practice is important, depending on your profession. Many of your students will likely share very sensitive information with you, and you must keep professional boundaries. So this isn't a yoga teacher training, massage training, and fitness teacher training. So you have to remember, some of those boundaries are, they're going to say things to you that you can't say to other people. You'll notice I'm not using names when I say, this person I know in my life experienced this thing. I even have changed genders for some of the stories I've told, so that if somebody watches this, they can't go, oh, I wonder if it's that person she's talking about. No, I've changed everything so that you have no clue, because that is a requirement of my professional boundaries when I am telling you testimonial stories. Because I don't, even if I did have that permission, I'm not going to tell that person something, because this is a self-study that's going to be on the internet for many people to hear. It's not my place. So I don't say names, I change genders, I change timelines of when I've experienced them, not to deceive you, but because again, I might have someone who knows that person go through this training. This includes understanding what is within the scope of practice what you can practice as a facilitator. You cannot diagnose, suggest, treat, or claim to cure anything as a yoga teacher, fitness teacher, massage therapist, anything. If ever in doubt, you will always encourage your students to connect with their doctor for questions on care or medication in yoga, massage, fitness, and teaching. All we are doing is holding a space. That's what we've been doing for each other this whole call. I'm going to hold a space while you tell me something. What does holding a space mean? This is the next paragraph. It just means you're just going to love others as you would love yourself. If you were hurting and you were talking to somebody, what would you want them to do? You want them to listen. You would want them to be non-judgmental. You would want them to maybe not give you a bunch of advice unless they ask. A lot of times people just need to get it out. I'm not actually looking for any advice. My husband's getting really good at that. I can talk about my husband because I have his permission. My husband's getting really good at that. I'll come in and I'll be like, blah, 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 I'll start venting. Well, okay, sorry. You didn't ask for that. Go ahead. Right? And at first I would start to be quiet and just be like, okay, he's going to give advice. And then he'd go, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't ask for that. And I'd be like, oh, thank you. Okay, so yeah, can you believe what she said? You know, and I'll start going, well, you know, because they may not need your advice. You may not have the nugget they need. They, in their gut, may have the nugget they need. They just need to verbally process it. So I hope when someone's talking to you, you're asking for you, whatever that guide is. For me, it's the Holy Spirit. I am literally, when I'm talking to you, praying. And in my head, you can't see my mouth move, but I'm saying things like, should I say that out loud? No. And then I just go, oh, dude, that sucks. Even though I might have the answer they need. Because 9 times out of 10, I just think that I have the answer they need. Moms. I see you shaking your head, right? We think we often and only have the answers they need. Sometimes we don't. We aren't raised in their generation. They aren't us. We don't get to be a part of a certain aspect of their future, but they do. So we don't always have the answers. So holding a space for someone means reserving that judgment. It really just means sitting there listening to them and praying your little tail off until you know that you know that you know you're feeling the problem. Ask. Right? You are still processing what I'm saying. You caught what I said, and you want more. So you asked me a question. And until then, patiently wait. That's holding a space for someone. As yoga teachers in a yoga class, the walls of our studio, invisible walls create outside as we teach and we walk around and we go, listen, you're safe to lay down and close your eyes. I will keep it safe in this room. Do you know how, we'll talk about this, how difficult it is for someone who has experienced trauma just to lay down and close their eyes and trust that nothing's going to intrude? What if your intrusion is in your mind like me? How safe is laying down and closing your eyes? Sometimes that's not safe. So as a yoga teacher, as a fitness professional, as a massage therapist, we're holding a space. We're going while you, gosh, I don't sorry, that's just not saying. I will keep vigil for you. You can look for me. I will hold down for it. A few minutes later with me in this conversation, in this yoga class, in this fitness class, on my massage table, you can let go.
Johnny,
you have a
I am
question?
so sorry if I'm cutting you off. I think Angie might be having a, oh, it's just the two of us now. Angie, were you having a hard time hearing her?
Yeah, it started glitching.
I felt so terrible because she would like come back on and then I kind of heard her crying when I tried to speak up.
Yeah.
And so do you think that we need to, oh, it's still recording too. How interesting.
There we
Oh,
go. She's back.
oh,
She's
she's
trying.
back. Cool.
Signal or something? Are you guys there?
Yeah,
We're still here.
Awesome. I'm gonna re-spotlight myself. Can you see me okay?
yes, you're good now. You started glitching there for a while. It was happening for both of us.
Okay, good now
It
then.
was such good stuff. Yes, we got you now. Keep
Okay,
moving.
so what did you hear last?
I heard how hard it is for a traumatized person to just lie down. That's the last thing I could really take notes on.
And
You were
so
getting
as a massage therapist, yoga teacher, conversationalist, friend, wife, husband, partner, parent, that's what we're doing is we're just holding a space. With trauma, there's this thing that we'll talk about in the future called hypervigilance. It's this always on, it's gonna happen again at any time, right? We tend to be very hypervigilant when we get around anybody who reminds us of our abuser or in our family dynamic. It's you being hypervigilant for them and going, I will hold this space. I will hold down the fort. I will make it safe for you to close your eyes for a moment. Whatever closing your eyes looks like, right? Connecting, having a moment. So that's what we're going to do to close out our class today, right? You've seen kind of the last paragraph on here, the last two paragraphs. I tell you, one of the things that I've learned to do to hold vigil for myself, and I'm going to do that with you guys. We're going to kind of do a meditation because we tend to want other people around us to be the space holders for us. And the truth is, you are the one that you are always going to be able to count on. Like, my husband loves me more than I could ever possibly process he loves me, you guys. I know I know how much he loves me because I know how much I love him, but he couldn't imagine how much I love him, and I know I can't imagine how much he loves me. And in his brokenness, he cannot be my space holder all the time, right? That's part of my struggle right now, is he cannot be that for me right now, right? Whereas in the past, he's been able to put himself aside and just be that for me. I didn't realize he was putting himself aside to be that for me. Well, now that I know what I know, we're in this new territory, right? So I'm going to teach you a safe grounding meditation that will be something that you can take with you in any environment. I'm having to do it right now. The other day, my sister and I were having a conversation, and I think a repressed memory started to come up because my heart started beating out of my chest. I got this nasty feeling in my gut that was coming up, and I started getting lightheaded with her while I was on the phone. And I went, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta start talking about this. I gotta go. I love you, I'm okay, but I love you, I have to go. And she had our parents, so she knows. She's good. She was like, okay, sounds good. Call me later. Make sure you let me know we're okay. Like, she knew exactly what was happening. And I leaned back on the couch and I got super lightheaded and overwhelmed and was like, okay. And I did this grounding meditation. It was very uncomfortable, but I was able to hold down the fort for a minute while that reaction happened. And as we go through this, not saying that's going to happen to you. That is my body's way of responding because I repressed everything from my childhood. So now as I'm going through more layers of healing, some things are coming up. But you will just have tough moments. You'll be at that dinner with your family. You'll be with the person who triggers you. You'll be with the people who upset you. And you need to know a way to get yourself out of that state of mind and ground yourself. I have exited the room at family gatherings and for 2 minutes gone into the bathroom and done this meditation. They don't know I'm not peeing. It's none of their business, right? Go into the bathroom and do this little safe space meditation and be your safe space until you get through the dinner or whatever you're doing. This is very powerful because you are going to become the person you needed when you were younger. You can't go back and make your parents be that. My mom is dead. There's no chance on this side of glory that I will have I have redemption, but I will never have full closure because we weren't able to do any reconciling conversations. She died. She never stood across from me and said, I'm sorry for everything that I put you and your sisters through, right? I had to be that for me. And it's possible to move forward into healing without that recognition. It is. I personally believe you need divine help for it, though it's possible. And thank God for psychiatrists and therapists and somatic healers and massage therapists and yoga teachers and really amazing group fitness instructors. Praise God for them. They are all the people that have been the ones that have been the most healing. So, if there are no more comments, questions, okay. So we are going to do this kind of grounding exercise. Now, I am not going to make it last very long. I'm not going to do a long, drawn out one because when we're triggered, when we feel like crap, when that person said something that makes us want to go off, rarely do we have like a 30-minute span where we can go find a yoga room and do mudras and chant and burn incense and hold our heart in our stomach and breathe, right? Sometimes we're at work, right? Sometimes we're in an active argument with our partner and can't walk away from it, right? So you've got to have these tools in your toolbox to kind of quickly gather yourself. So it's only going to be about 2 or 3 minutes. It's going to take me longer to explain it. But once you get into a rhythm of knowing yours, and I really do encourage you, have a version of it that's yours, that you employ when you need it, that doesn't take very long. Because the more you do it, the more it will start to, and faster, calm you down. Here's what I mean. Have you ever heard that song on the radio station and you're like, oh, I don't really like the song, it's not whatever. But then they play it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Are you catching my drift? And over and over. And then after a while you hear it and you're like, oh my gosh, I love this song. No, you don't love it, you just heard it over and over and over again. And so you were programmed to respond to it now. That's what you're doing. You're capitalizing on the fact that your brain, when it does something over and over and over again, it'll automate it. So you can, in this way, not fully, don't hear me tell you this is a Band-Aid black and white truth, but you can automate some peaceful responses to things sometimes. Because if you do it over and over and over and over and over and over again, your brain goes, oh yeah, we're doing this thing, okay. Okay, so find a comfortable position. This is recorded. You don't have to write down everything I'm saying. It's recorded. It'll be in the portal. You can listen to it over and over again. You can sit down later and do it like a written meditation. But for right now, it's here. I'm here. You'll be able to watch this again. I'm sitting up. I brought this bolster because I like to sit up and sit against the wall. So I were in my home taking this class. I'm sitting on a blanket. I'm going to put a bolster underneath my knees. I like it really low down on my calves so my heels don't sit on the ground. And I'm leaning against the wall. I'm intentionally pressing my head back against the wall. And then just find your version of this. You might want to lay down. Maybe you can do that at work. Just find a very comfortable position for yourself where you're not having to use your muscles to hold yourself in place. Find lots of support points. That's why I'm leaning up against the wall. And then do 3 of these. Inhale, and then go. Do it again. Inhale. Inhale. And then just let your breathing become somewhat normal and just notice it. In your mind's eye, I want you to think of your favorite place that you could ever go. The place that just as soon as you walk in that room, or you walk towards that place, you just start to smile. You don't even know why, your soul just loves it. Mine is a rocky, brisk, windy beach. Not a soft, sand, beachy, hot beach. I don't like being hot. What does that place sound like? What does that place smell like? Can you feel sunshine on your skin? Can you feel wind on your skin? What are the sensations that go along with that place? Is there anybody there with you? Is there a person that just, not one word could be said, but their presence of their body next to you is just calming? Maybe nobody's there, but maybe that's not a thing for you, and actually being alone is what calms you down. And if you can, call to mind the version of yourself that you know needs the most healing right now. Just think of that person. And if you're little, maybe you scoop you up on your lap. If you're not little, maybe you just sit next to you. And what do you need to hear? Or what do you need to feel? Maybe no words would help. Maybe you just need to be hugged by you. Maybe you just want to say one word to yourself. Maybe you want to say a lot of words to yourself. What does that look like for you to provide for yourself what you need in this moment? Now, what does hearing that and getting your need met feel like in your body? Is there a muscular tension you can let go of? Has your breath gotten deeper? And then is there anything you want to say as a send-off to yourself? Is there anything you want to say to seal this communication up? Let's end it with 3 of those long, deep breaths again. So inhale and audibly inhale. One last time. Inhale. And wherever you are, just blink your eyes open. Don't move right away. Just give yourself the intention to move slowly into the next thing you do. Hold that sensation with you. If you rush to get up, it kind of switches your gears. And then when you're ready, come join me back. I'll share with you a little bit of what mine is. I didn't want to fully share what mine is with you before you did yours because I didn't want to like taint yours. But I didn't know it when I created this little visualization for myself, but I always choose a rocky beach because growing up, the few times that my mom didn't actually let anybody help us, it was her sisters, Annette and Sunny, and they lived in Portland. And so rarely, but a couple of times, we went to visit them in Portland and they would take us to the beach. So I didn't know why, but people always like, oh, let's go to the beach. And I'm like, I don't want to go to a sunny, hot, loud beach. Like that does not sound fun to me at all. But if you want to go to a Portland deserted beach where there's rocks everywhere and you're in a sweatshirt and you're sitting like this and your hood's on because the mist is coming at you all day long, total peace. Well, it's because it's the only happy childhood memories that I have. And so when I experienced that, I have one picture of myself when I was a child. Actually, two. My aunt found one the other day. One of them was, I was about 4, and my sister has explained to me that it was very shortly after my dad left. And so it's a picture of me, and I've always had long, thick hair. And so it was my hair, and it was all spread across my shoulders and really pretty, and I was smiling really big. And I asked my sister about it. I'm like, this must have been like a time when we were happy. And she just automatically started crying. I'm like, well, what was it? What was that picture taken from? And she's like, that's actually very shortly after Dad left. And your hair started falling out in these big chunks. And we always wanted to play with your hair, but you didn't want us to that time because it was falling out. And so you didn't want us to brush it. So we used our fingers and we brushed it and we fixed it really pretty for you. We took a picture of it. Sorry. And so for me, when I'm retraining that little girl, it's always her that I picture. And so I always, when I'm on the beach, I'm always with Jesus. He's sitting right next to me. He's never talking to me. He's rarely touching me. In fact, I always just lay my head on his shoulders. But he's not preaching. He's not comforting me. He's just present, which is very much the Holy Spirit, right? Always there. Not necessarily always tangible or audible, but always there, right? So in my visualizations, he never says anything to me. But I have her scooped up and I'm talking to her and I'm telling her what she needs to hear. Sometimes it's not your fault. It wasn't your fault that those things happened, and therefore it's not your responsibility to make it better, right? But I'm always talking to her and mommying her in what she needs to hear. And I always send her off in a carefree manner, right? So we always look at each other. I always wipe her tears. I always ask her if she's feeling okay and if she's ready to walk away. And she'll say, yes, I'm ready. And I'll go, okay, go have fun. And I'll just say something like you would your kids, right? Like, I'm gonna hit you, right? Or just something very childlike, because I never got to be a child. So I just try to say something very childlike. And then I try to feel in my body what that would feel like to have had a mom who protected me and helped me process how I was feeling and telling me it was okay to feel what I was feeling, right? And then and I can do it now within about 45 seconds, 30, 45 seconds. So there's been times that I'm having a hard time and I'll just go, oh, excuse me for just a second, I gotta go grab something, right? Nobody needs to know what you're doing, right? Just step away, be what you need, and then come back. They don't have to know anything. So that's mine. I hope you create your own and make it your own, right? Make it your own. But the important parts of it are that you feel safe, that to the extent that you're even able in that moment, you're trying to meet a need, because you have everything that little one needs to hear. and that you are recognizing how does it feel in my body. That's why I said, what does it smell like? I can smell the salty water. What does it feel like? I can feel the mist on me. I can feel the wind, and I'm shivering a little bit because it's cold, right? So what you really want to do is get all your body sensations in it. And then at the end, when you feel the piece, include your body sensations again. My heart slowed down. My shoulder tension went away. For me, the left side of your body is the feminine side of your body. So I often have my left thigh tense. You know, it's very weird. You know, some people do their shoulders or whatever. For me, it's my left leg. I tend to like death grip with my left leg, and I have to kind of, you'll see me as I teach sometimes, I'll just kind of do that. Because I'm dispelling the energy. I'm shaking and just getting rid of the energy, right? Now that I know I'm neurodivergent, there's a couple of exams I've taken recently where I'll actually go like this, right? You see people on the spectrum doing that. So I started to try to do that, like kind of go like this. It just gets rid of some of that tension. So the last piece you want to do is, what do I feel like peaceful? Because here's the truth, you guys, if you're around that person and you've never felt peace around that person, you might not have a frame of reference for peaceful in that person's presence. How messed up is that? So can you also be nice to yourself about that? You may not know what peace feels like around that person. There is a couple people in my life that I have never felt peaceful in their presence. And as I've gotten older, I've given myself permission to not be around people that I don't feel peaceful around. What a beautiful way I'm protecting myself. Right? Now, I don't not talk to them. I respond when they communicate with me and all those things, but I ain't sinking to go lay and cuddle with them in bed like I used to, right? So that's what I have for you today. The takeaways I would love for you to feel is let go of whatever the hell normal is, because it's not a thing. Give yourself some space to think that you're freaking awesome for getting through what you've gone through. And let's start to build a frame of reference for how you can begin to be a provider of safety for yourself. Any questions or comments or anything before we get going? I guess it did take the full 2 hours. Look at that, there's no two of us and it took 2 hours. I'll try to keep it next time. Make sure we fit in the window. All right, you guys. Hey, listen, you might be tired. You might need to drink some extra water. You might need to go take a nap. You might need to go eat a Milano and watch your favorite TV show. Like, just go be nice to you, okay? Bye, guys.
Love you.
Next Tuesday.
Bye.
Love you guys. See you next Tuesday. I adore you both. Bye, guys.